into the world of IoTs. Our next panel discussion is on security risks in a world of connected devices. Our modern world is increasingly interconnected with smart devices permeating every aspect of our lives, from our homes and workplaces to our cars and even our bodies. While the promise of a seamlessly connected world is tantalizing, it comes with a host of security risks that demand our attention. Let us delve into the discussion to understand some of the key security risks associated with the interconnected world of devices. Let's welcome our esteemed panelist, Minatee Mishra, Director, Product Security Philips, Lakshmi Nair, Managing Principal, APAC, Devesh Bhatt, he's a cybersecurity leader, and Divakar Prayaga, Director, Cyber Engineering, Maersk. This discussion will be moderated by Shreyas Dighe, co-founder and CEO of Secasure.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks Divakar, Minatee, Lakshmi, Devesh for being here. Looking forward to an insightful next 30-35 minutes on security risk in the world of connected devices. I am thankful to everybody who's assembled here and hope we are able to make a difference. We have got Milind sir from NSDL, we have from Apur sir and Ramesh sir. So there are different people. Kishan sir from Blue Star, of course. So maybe all everybody is having some interlink with the IoT. NSDL could tomorrow have an Alexa integration. Blue Star can have so their AC is talking in the world of IoT. Solar panels are there from Apur sir and Tata AIG Ramesh sir. I cannot spot it. So looking forward to an insightful session. Hope we are able to make some difference here. I'll spend another 2 minutes if everybody could just give a brief intro about themselves, and then maybe we can get started.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having us. First time in Ahmedabad and really liking the electrifying young crowd over here. So looking forward to have a very engaging discussion and learn a lot. So my name is Divakar, based out of Bangalore, currently working with AP Moller Maersk. I'm leading the portfolio of cyber engineering there.
Hi, thanks for being there. We understand we are between you and your lunch, but yes, thanks. And I'm Minatee from Philips Bangalore. I am a director of product security who set up the Security Center of Excellence.
Hello everyone, and thanks BSides for having us here. My name is Lakshmi Nair. I'm based out of Bangalore. I work for Synopsys and take care of the APAC level consulting services.
Hi, this is Devesh. I'm also from Bangalore. Currently, I'm working with Adobe. I manage multiple teams there, offensive, defensive, and everything security engineering. So really excited to be part of this panel. Thank you.
So let's get started. Divakar will begin with you. Can you help me understand the current state of cybersecurity in IoT as to what is the current state and what it helps set the context as well?
Absolutely. So before I set the context, I think let me look at the audience and try to understand how many connected devices are you using. So with the raise of your hand, tell me how many are using one connected devices right now? You can raise your hand if it is one. Okay, one person says one, that's more than that. So how many are using two connected devices? Okay, I see more hands. How many are using three connected devices? All right, good number of hands. 4, 5, yes. So that's how it is evolving. So just to give you a brief history of how it all started and how it is going to look like, that's what we are going to do here. So it all started with possibly connecting a sandwich machine, sandwich toaster in the year 1990. So that was the first connected device by some scientist, I don't remember the name, but it all started there and it evolved over a period, and maybe a couple of decades ago there was nothing connected, but today we are living in the world of connected devices, and you have seen, I mean, it is just growing with the number of devices that we connected. It could be smartwatch, mobile phone and other gadgets. This is on the consumer side, and on the industrial side, it's taking a new trend, and the adaptation in the industries, automation is actually banking on a whole lot of connected devices, whether it be barcode scanners, robotics, advanced applications of that is going to be the new norm. And the adaptation has a huge uptick. So just to put a number to that, 2023, the estimated budget of the connected devices is at 700 billion. I repeat, it is in billions. And in the next 5 years, some of the consulting firms are estimating that number to be 3,500 billion. Right? So that's an uptick of 5x in revenue But any guesses what would be the threat vector that this plethora of devices are going to bring? Give me a wild guess. Is it going to be the same 5x or is it going to be higher? So it's going to be higher. Just to put a number to that, it's going to be 10x, because the risk is also increasing at the same pace. So that's how it is evolving, and that's where it becomes really important to have adequate regulations, controls, and processes and awareness in place. Yeah, that's a brief thing. Thank you.
Thanks for that insight, Divakar. You talked about sandwich makers, you talked about different IoT devices and how they would grow 5x or 10x. So we have Minatee from manufacturer's side. That's a coincidence that, we have. So let's say from Minatee, if you could, share it from a manufacturer's perspective as to what would it be in case,
So I come from Philips, which is primarily focused on healthcare. Now, healthcare is a major adopter of IoT devices. And when it comes to healthcare, cybersecurity of the device is almost synonymous with safety of the patient. I'll explain it with an example. So, in year 2016, a very famous researcher, Billy Reyes, he researched on an infusion pump. Now, what is an infusion pump? That's very prevalent in Western countries, wherein you load medicines in the pump and you mention what is the dosage which has to be given to the patient. And then the patient is given those medicines based on the doses prescribed. Now, this researcher was in the hospital for a few days and he saw the infusion pump and then he said, let me check if I can hack it. And he went ahead and hacked it, and almost all kind of vulnerabilities he found, including, non-authentication. And he was able to attack that infusion pump from a remote network and change the levels of the medicines to be given. So you understand how deeply is security related to patient safety. Now, this is the reason why the regulators in the medical device field became aware of this and have brought stronger measures from a regulation. And I'm talking mostly about the US market, wherein regulators like FDA play a major role. And without their going through that gate, we cannot sell in the US market, which happens to the largest medical device market for us. Okay, so what is the state now? We have very strong medical device regulations which monitor right from the requirements to the entire product development and even in the post-market. The security is living from the birth of the device and lives till the system is alive. And just to mention, for a medical device, many times the end of life of a medical device spans between 10 to 15 years. So that's the lifetime of a device for which we have to maintain it securely.
Thanks, Minatee. Thanks for this. So, we heard about Divakar's perception about 10x growth. We heard about your perception from manufacturer's perspective as to how the typically from a healthcare angle. So, Lakshmi, can you help me understand from the consumer viewpoint as to how do we maintain that balance between the convenience that comes with the IoT devices versus the security aspects associated? So, what would be that striking balance?
So I'll take from what Divakar mentioned, right, about the number of connected devices that we have every day. So if we kind of take a percentage of that 700 or 500 that you mentioned to the number of consumer devices which we each of us are connected to today, that could attribute to around 60% of the entire connected devices in the world. So which is like increasing every day, right? So imagine the situation that at least out of the 60%, which is say around 140 million or something like that. So around 80% is spoofed, right? So imagine the number of alerts that the current systems could really generate, and that could give you an alert that there is a security problem. There is something that has been spoofed and there is something that has been tampered, with the device that you are using. Do you think any of the devices, any of the monitoring systems that we have today is capable of handling that level of number of alerts? I don't think we have any, right? So that's the magnitude that we are looking at when it comes to the attack surface, when it comes to just the consumer part of it. So a lot of this, I think, is related to people like us knowing what you are connected to. At some point, when someone said one, I'm sure you're connected to more than one device. Not just now, but in your day-to-day life, you're connected to more than one device, maybe at your home, right? And then what you are connected to and what your connected devices are connecting to as well. So that is a pertinent aspect, which is a lot to do with awareness when it comes to the consumer space, because no manufacturer is going to tell us these are some of the security measures that we need to take to protect or to not being attacked by any of the threat vectors that we have. I think for the consumer space, I think awareness is the most important thing that I see will play a major role in preventing, nothing else.
So probably that is why we had celebrating the Cybersecurity Awareness Month this month. October is known as the Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Yesterday we did a small gesture by illuminating the awareness by giving the candles. So taking it up with Devesh, can you help me understand some adversarial perception to this IoT security in general?
I think Divakar started on the right note regarding the vastness of this topic. We are talking about, if I have to talk about the attack surface, because whenever we talk about adversaries, we talk about the attack surface first. So first of all, it is very difficult to measure because these are like, most of these devices are black box. But we are talking at a scale of 20 billion plus currently. And with the stats that Divakar gave, it is going to rise exponentially, right? So attack surface is not in our control. Second piece is what Minatee talked about, the criticality of these devices. If these are like medical devices, we are talking about people's life at risk. Say, for example, consider any of their cloud application. If it goes down or if it gets hacked, maximum we are talking about financial risk, or probably most of the time it is financial, right? But here it is going to be people's life at stake. So both from whether it is the attack surface and the criticality, this is definitely a very, very critical topic. So now, whenever I have to talk about adversaries, I always think from how we have thought when we were like, we used to be involved in wars. So I always remember this famous quote from this book called Art of War by Sun Tzu. And it goes like this. If you know your enemies, you need not fear a result of 100 battle. So, right. So it's very important to know who are your adversaries. And that's what exactly we do in our adversary emulation. So I'll basically briefly touch base on what is adversary emulation. So adversary emulation is nothing but you basically do a setup wherein you try and emulate the adversarial behavior. So now you may ask how it can be done in the IoT setup, right? There are so many devices. Most of these are like black box and things like that. Actually, first of all, let me explain what are the different types of adversaries from the general trend, right? So at the lowest level are the script kiddies, which are like they just look for that big red button or a tool. They just love running tools which are already there. And second level are the researchers, not the good ones who are here, but the ones who are like hidden, but also little bit more skilled than script kiddies. Third level goes to the e-criminals who are out there hidden. They want to work for some profit. A typical example is ransomware as a service. You pay them get them on your side, and then plan a ransomware attack. The topmost is the nation state, right? And when we talk about IoT and XIoT, we are dealing against that level of adversary. So how to prepare our systems at scale so that we are able to deal with such level, right? We all know what happened with Mirai botnet that hit us in 2016, I guess. Very simple attack when you look at it, right? It was just a case of default credential and finding a vulnerable software running on certain cameras. And then the botnet was basically infecting any other camera and then joining the hands and finding other cameras to do the DDoS attack. So what we have done, and I'm talking more from my expertise from adversary emulation, you can basically set up a system, have adversaries or the researchers at one end, and then capture the traffic. As you know, when you capture the traffic, you'll get a lot of meaningful insights because data is the new oil, right? And then based on that, I think Karthik Shinde and Vandana also talked about in the earlier talk today. When you get to that level at the traffic, you can get a lot of meaningful information from the traffic from a threat intel perspective. And that can be leveraged to enhance the security at the other end. So that's how I see the overall adversarial landscape. Basically, understanding the adversaries, learning from the data that gets captured during the process.
So, Devesh, you spoke about wars. That reminds me, Minatee, let's have it this way that, imagine you are anyway into the connected device, you're manufacturing it. So, if your latest device is, I would say, some kind of a superhero, if it was a superhero, then what should be its superpower according to you?
Yeah, I would like my superhero to be like Hulk, who can self-heal itself. So in software, I would say that the support for patchability and upgradability is the most important thing, because if the device is having vulnerability, I have an ability via robust update facility to update the device and refit it again.
And, okay. And Divakar, if, on this context, if we talk about the most primary threat vector or vulnerability in the IoT devices that you face today, then what is the most primitive one? I mean, I can say there are a lot that can be discussed, but the most primary one or the probably most imperative one, the threat vector or vulnerability that we can talk about.
I think in the world of connected tech, primarily if I look at the most easily compromising threat vector, it would be credential theft. So either you are storing your credentials in a plain text or a spreadsheet without a password, or not protecting behind a strong encryption password manager or something, it's easily prone to be leaked. So that's one. I can think of a lot of man-in-the-middle attacks. MITM is what world calls it. Yeah. So man-in-the-middle attacks are pretty much prevalent because of the most of the connected tech works with radio frequency, Bluetooth, and other connected tech, mostly wireless tech. So a lot of man-in-the-middle attacks are prevalent in the industry, in the consumer space, somebody doing hijacking your radio frequency and all that. At a nation state and strong adversarial standpoint, I could think of distributed denial of service. So DDoS is a famous technique where most of the large enterprises are falling prey to that, with multiple attempts of DDoS happening from multiple regions, and it's easy. It's easy to attack a connected tech quite with a lot of investment in tech. Yeah? So these are the top three is what I have seen and observed and working on.
Thanks for sharing three of them. So in this battle of, I would say cyber threats, connected devices or super devices, Lakshmi, can you help me understand how organizations can safeguard themselves? Because as he mentioned, MITM, so we all, if we talk about IoT space, then the organizations would depend on some firmware over the upgrades, over their upgrades as well. FOTA threats are there again based on MITM and stuff. So he talked about DDoS. So how can organizations shield themselves and safeguard them or be on the winning side, I would say? How would they be on the winning side?
That's I think, a bit tricky question, because there is no single solution that we can offer. There is no one size fits all, is what I would say. So it all depends also on the type of IoT devices that you are trying to protect. For example, something which is something which Minatee said about the medical devices. You have a connectivity of those devices. It could be from home. It could be maybe a blood pressure monitor, which is fitted to a patient at home. That is connected to a larger hospital network to monitor remotely from there. It could be something that is like an infusion pump, which is right there in the hospital, fitted with a patient there. That could be one kind of device. The other one could be the home devices, the wearable devices that we are connecting. That there could be other ones like connected cars and stuff like that, which is connected to a larger network. So all depends on to some extent, that depends on the type of device that you're trying to protect as well. So going back to the basics, I think putting the right basics in place about your secure coding practices, having a robust application security measured, secure by design is very, very important to any device, no matter whichever you are connected to, right? And beyond that, going also with the dynamic testing, which is beyond your static analysis. There are tools that are available to do SAST in the market, which could help you to uncover the code level vulnerabilities. Beyond that, how do you look at your deep pen testing and DAST specific test on these devices before they go out in the market is extremely important. But keeping all of that in place, protecting the ecosystem in which these devices are operating is equally important. For example, you deal with a lot of protocols these days to the LMP or GISMA, all of this when it comes to connecting to the devices. So a lot has been claimed about these protocols. I'm sure they're secure in itself, but many times the manufacturers miss looking at the fuzzing space. You don't really look at interpreting or seeing how we can fuzz these protocols to see if someone can get into maybe a man-in-the-middle attack or maybe a spoofing attack to get into those devices, which is extremely important, which I think the manufacturers are missing that point in many situations. And then comes to the hub level security. How do you segregate the network and also make sure, for example, at your home, you have devices that is connected within the home and which is connected outside your home network? How do you segregate those network as such to make sure that your things which are connected within the home remains within the home? They are not exposed to the internet outside, right? So the hub level security is equally important as well. And then goes beyond the monitoring and tracking on a regular basis. I think this is a layered model which everyone is familiar with, which and also, as I said, depends on what level, what are the type of devices that we are protecting and we are trying to deploy in the market. So not just from the manufacturing, a deployment of these devices in the larger ecosystem plays a very important role in securing them as well.
Thanks for that insight, Lakshmi. That also helps, but when you talked about deep pen testing and also that is where we fit in. So it's good that, how Synopsys, SaaS tools and they could complement the deep pen testing. That way doing together, we could help seal the IoT ecosystem in general. Okay, let's switch gears now. Let's have a quick game, I would say. Let's do a quick game. So Divakar and Devesh, this is up to you guys. What I'll do is I'll name any connected device. And maybe Devesh, you could help me with the futuristic threat associated to it, while Divakar could talk about a defense mechanism. Okay, let's take connected eyeglasses, for example. So what is the futuristic threat that you see with the connected eyewear? While Divakar, I would want to hear from you on the defense mechanism of it.
The first thing would be being very portable. I think the threat is obviously the physical threat to theft. But more than that, what I think is privacy. Because if it gets hacked, someone who is wearing it, actually hackers can have his eyes, whether looking at what he's looking, the passwords he's typing. So I think if it gets hacked and it is unknown, I think privacy is at stake.
Thanks a lot, Devesh. I think if I have to pick a defense mechanism, which is not available in the industry today, but something that has to shape up from a product manufacturing standpoint, would be around centralized management of these devices if it is on the industrial side, right? So you have an option to push the updates and secure it disable some of the functions is what I've seen in the industry that really works in the favor of defense. The other area is around implementing necessary controls, not storing the credentials on a local machines or systems, then possibly adapting to the necessary minimum baselines, minimum guidelines, adapting to the secure policies. So those are the couple of defense mechanisms I could think of in terms of end consumer products like this.
Thanks, Divakar. Thanks, Devesh. Let's have a round of mythbusters with you both. So, Minatee and Lakshmi, I would want to hear from you one common misconception that people have about this connected devices security. What could be the common misconception? And Minatee, maybe you could confirm or bust it, whatever. So, over to you, Lakshmi.
There are a lot of beliefs around the connected devices. So one which I can think about, and I think this is very prevalent in our home environment, right? So for example, we have a smart washing machine, right? Or maybe a smart scale that is connected to just your phone. It doesn't really store any sensitive personal information, nor it is connected to network. It is just within the home. Or I have a TV. I have a set of fancy smart lighting system, which doesn't store anything which is personal to me, anything sensitive to me. So to that extent, I don't think they are to be protected with all this expensive and tedious controls that we are talking about. Do you think so?
Yeah, audience poll busted, right? Yeah. So even if a IoT device does not contain any sensitive information, but by itself, there are 3 areas in which it can be misused. Number 1, the device itself can be hacked and cause fatalities, like given the example of the infusion pump. It did not have any sensitive information at all, but it could still harm a patient. For that matter, in a home environment, if I have a microwave and it is connected, and I can hack into it and change the parameter thresholds, I can end up burning the home in some scenarios. So that's one area in which I can hack it, cause fatalities. Second is, even if I am not able to harm that particular device, vulnerable IoT can get me access to the network in which it is housed. So it can be a gateway to the other network that I house. And the third one is like what we saw in Mirai botnet. It is a pivot for other attacks to be launched. So yeah, busted.
Thanks, sir. Thanks. Hold on. So I have got a couple of questions for you both as well. So Minatee and Lakshmi, I wanted to understand, Lakshmi, you talked about organizations being on the winning side. I want to hear from you on more about, the security by design, while Minatee could add up from the government and regulatory aspects to it as to how things are, tailored as on date.
A very, very important question. I think that's something that we miss when we actually design or manufacture IoT devices, right? So secure by design, when it comes to, I think a lot of this with the reducing the attack surface, I think that's going to be one of the primary objective when it comes to designing the IoT devices, which would also get into how do we containerize and how do you kind of make sure that you have a secure specific environment, which is where these systems are supposed to be operated in. That also adds up to your external dependencies. How do you make it like least privilege? The authentication control that Divakar you mentioned about, one of the critical areas where many of the IoT devices fail today. How do you implement robust and authentication controls to prevent that? The other one that that I can think about is also you have several frameworks that are available, right? L2M, M2M. So a lot of these frameworks available. They have guidance around how to design each type of IoT system. If I go back to my earlier point about depends on what type of IoT devices are you designing, that point also get into the picture. Then another very pertinent aspect which people miss in the design perspective is about code signing and the code protection aspect, which is primarily a threat vector, when it comes to someone tampering that code in itself and remotely and getting doors to the overall device, and then again to the other connected devices as well. So many times we don't really look at code signing and code protection. That comes into the picture when it comes to the design, secure by design aspect. And the last one, how do we define, I think that should be the first one to look about, how do we define the security design based on the data that it stores, the data that it processes, the connectivity, that exposure that has into. So that is where the list of controls, how severe, how strong these controls should be, which many times we miss in defining. Sometimes we overdo it, sometimes we miss them. And also how to protect the privacy aspect of is in the data cycle of the overall design of the devices. So many times, as Minatee mentioned, the life cycle of a lot of devices is more than 10 to 15 years, which means a lot of sensitive data will kind of reside in these devices for a longer time. So in the design principle, we also need to look at, I think I'll go back to the recent act, Data Protection Act, of right to be forgotten or right to be, I mean, we don't have a right to be erased in that act, but how do we also mention about how to archive, how to delete the data which is stored in that devices, and overall life cycle of these devices to make sure that they are not left unattended, they are left open for attackers to pick up. So those are some of the design principles, basic design principles that we need to look at to summarize: data, attack surface, and your trust zones, based on which how do we define the controls around it.
Thank you. And I have to answer the question about regulations, right? Yeah.
We hear from you more on the government and regulatory side, because
Sure.
the manufacturer, and that too typically in healthcare, so you would be well aware of
Got
it.
it. Got
So let's let the audience know more about it.
Yes. While answering to the regulations, I would like to first state something. Now, whatever my co-panelists said, it's very important because regulation is an afterthought. Once all devices are in the market, their vulnerable regulations come into picture, and that too, for them to be enforced, it takes time. So there is a time lapse between the regulations coming into picture, enforced, and the devices being really secure. So all these design principles of securing your devices of paramount importance for us to ensure that we are giving secure devices to our consumers or patients. Okay, coming to regulations, the couple of regulations around this area, a bit too late though, but I would mention a couple of them. From a sector perspective, I did mention about FDA earlier, in which all medical devices in the US are regulated by FDA, and they're very stringent development, post-market surveillance regulations around it. I won't go into any further. Similar ones are coming in the Europe region also. But from an IoT perspective, we see change happening. So you have seen devices having CE mark on them. The CE mark basically means that they have tested it for the hazards of emissions. And once it is CE marked, a consumer can safely use that device in the house. So now they are going to append the CE marking with cybersecurity requirements. That means if I buy a device, especially in the Europe region, after 2025, a CE mark would mean that they are also tested for cybersecurity requirements. So this is a game changer, but just that it is a bit too late. So after 2025, I can be sure that if I have a CE mark device, it is secure. However, there are still some things which the owner of the device should ensure, that they are still responsible for configuring the device. Even if it is highly secured, they are still responsible for configuring the device properly, keeping the right kind of passwords or whatever authentication they need to do, keeping the right network separation they need to do. There are a set of responsibilities. But with these regulations, we are also enforcing the manufacturers to do the right thing for the consumers.
Just wanted to add, also from automotive perspective, with the connected cars and rise, we see a few regulations that are coming up, ISO 262, Mishra, all of these are coming up as well, where just like the CE mark, the companies have been asked to comply with the automotive security regulations as well. So it's a good thing that we, even if it is an afterthought, we see regulations coming across the sectors to protect the IoT devices within that.
Thanks for that additional insight, Lakshmi, and thanks, Minatee, for raising the bar about, now the next time we buy something in 2025, maybe see FCC, these regulations would be cyber. We'd also talk about cyber compliance. So as we wrap up, I believe in context of time, I want Divakar and Devesh, you would have been around, so I wanted to hear from you on the predictions that you see. She predicted about 2025 being a year where we see regulation being talking about cyber compliance. We heard from Lakshmi as well on certain insights. So can you both talk about the future prediction, maybe around 3 years or 5 years from now? What state do you see now of cybersecurity? And again, you already talked about the 5x or 10x growth in terms of the consumer adoption, but in terms of, in general, the domain. So where do you see that domain in 5 years from now?
I think majority of the problems that we talked about around IoT revolves around identification and authentication. With the advent of AI and ML, I see those getting solved. And we also talked about the opportunities with threat intelligence in the previous talk. So I think some of it will be adopted in the IoT and XIoT space. And I think my answers are all coming from the previous talks regarding zero trust as well, right? So I see that also happening. And Minatee mentioned about the mark, the security mark. I think the bill got placed in July sometime. And then we have also heard regarding the need of moving the low-level programming code, which is memory unsafe. That bill has already been submitted in the US Parliament. So if you have to do business with the US government, you have to either move your existing low-level code to the high-level languages, which is memory safe, or you have to show them a proof of a dynamic testing report, right? So all these things are becoming reality. We are talking about 3-5 years, but it is happening now.
The journey has started.
Yeah. And then SBOM, I think, which is Security Bill of Materials, I think it is going to be a game changer.
US government anyway, they have...
Yeah, SBOM is reality now. It's not future.
It's anywhere reality.
Yeah.
That's where Lakshmi, we have got our portfolio where we are offering SBOM generation. So
yeah, we have also started at Adobe our journey towards it. So yeah, that's what I feel. Most of it is happening now, but I think we'll see more of this in the coming future.
And Divakar, can you add some insight before we close the talk?
Absolutely, Shreyas. Thanks a lot, Devesh, for adding that. I think if I have to predict and look forward to what kind of connected tech would be leveraged by all of us, I think one campaign I had been predicting this for a long time. How many Star Wars fans in the house? So they have been doing an amazing job of predicting what this could look like in the future. They have been inspiring for generations together, and that continues. And a lot of things have been taken from that, and industries have been adapting, developing new consumer products. Jokes apart, I think if I have to look at how health tech specifically, I've been following the work of Neuralink, the health tech of Elon Musk, and they have been making great strides in terms of the connected tech and leveraging some of those implants, whether it be in the brain and the human body. So you get instant monitoring of your health stats on your mobile device or some other display. So how is this going to identify, detect some of the pain-causing elements, whether it be cancers, tumors, etc. in our body is going to be a big tech industry from a health standpoint. Apart from that, I think a lot of home automation and connected devices are on the verge of rising. So I think we have a count of connected tech devices right now. In future, very soon, we'll be losing the count of connected tech or leveraging connected tech in our lives. So everything will be driven by a lot of automated connected tech. That's my prediction.
I have one more point. So I'm someone who doesn't use any of the connected. I don't wear smart watches. So just because I fear that someone is going to use my health data, and I see 10 years, 5 years down the line, we have strong privacy regulations in place where someone is using that without my permission, they are going to be penalized, and I can absolutely choose to wear my Apple Watch.
Thank you very much. Great insight. Lot of learning for all of us. This is a new area for the cybersecurity industry community. Minatee, you talked about 2025, that regulation coming. Some more things coming up in US.
Yes.
Uh, See, are we taking pace with how we are evolving?
Right.
The
Yeah.
I generally go to basics. We have ISO
Yeah, sure.
27001,
Yeah.
which version came in 2013. Next one only came in 2022.
Yeah.
And the auditors would never relate it to the cloud infrastructure. It was purely built towards the on-prem infrastructure.
Yeah.
So what, as an industry, we can do to
Yeah.
work with governments to keep ourselves in pace with how technology is developing?
Sure. Thank you. A very good point. I couldn't touch on this because of lack of time. Even though regulations are coming late, standards are already there. So be it NIST standard or ISO standards for securing IoT devices are already there. Regulations are a means to enforce it. So this is just to say that people are doing the right thing, and if you don't do it, you won't get entry to the market. Regulations are doing just that. So we already have the basics in place, and we should be actually complying to the standards. Just that unless we have the backing of the regulations, nobody can force it on us. So that's the only difference regulation is making, but the standards are already proven and they're in the market, in the industry rather.
Thank you. Thank you, Minatee.
Yeah, so OWASP, typically we follow for web, right? So, but there is IoT Security Foundation that is doing some excellent work around this.
As Minatee ma'am said, even if a IoT device doesn't contain any vulnerable information, it can get us access to a network. The first thing that came to my mind was the printers in the Stuxnet attack. I believe the Stuxnet attack is very famous. So the main target of the Stuxnet attack was a industrial controller in a nuclear lab. It is a digital device, but it is not necessarily a smart device. So I want to ask you, how vulnerable are devices which are not smart but digital in the IoT age? Can they consider an IoT device because they are just digital but not smart? And how vulnerable they are to any attacks or all attacks in the upcoming IoT boom or the current standards or the current industry? This open is open to all the panels. Thank you.
So interesting question. So when it comes to the digital space, right, it's just like any of the devices, for example, your routers, your switches, or any digital device in the digital space is vulnerable to attack, right? So of course you have the configuration controls that will prevent attacks from that, and the ability to patch them on time becomes extremely important to prevent the attacks on them. And then again, your network, your surrounding controls wherein these devices are located, that is something which many times we miss on the configuration controls on the deployment space. So with both these things, we should be able to protect these devices.
I can just add, since this is specific to the OT side of the industrial area, it's a usual practice that these devices are locked down for any end user tampering. And I think firmware upgrading or just updating these devices comes with a whole lot of physical challenges. Having access to these devices should be restricted to only specific personnel. So that could be one control where they are not tampered. So if it is centrally managed, I think pushing the updates, centrally managing it from a console or from an operation center is much easier way. Thanks a lot for asking that question.
Hey, thank you. It was very interesting panel discussion. And we heard there are 50% IoT devices in the hands of the consumers. So when we talk of standards, we know how consumers are. They are so good in following them. Today, even after 10 years, there are many, I'm sure here, who did not change their home router password from what it was.
That's right, sir. That's
isn't it? And now these IoT devices are given in their hands, and that too in volumes. Like I have one home router, but I have 5 to 6 connected devices. So do you think these OEMs, the manufacturers of IoT have actually taken this psychology in mind before they manufactured and introduced the security, assuming that the consumers will not be sensitive to it?
Actually, the interesting fact is what I have seen from the security standards, okay, they do take into consideration the consumer behavior. I'll give you an example. So your router would have a default password. If you see the new routers, they'll enforce you to change the password after the person. That's an easy way to change the password. Similarly, now many devices will enforce you to structure a stricter password. So there are ways in which the standards do lay out that this should be done so that the consumer really doesn't have to take all the responsibility of securing it. So yes, it is in place. But yeah, it may not be 100%, but yes, we are going there.
So the other side of my question is from the industry players' point of view. So anything, even if you take ISO 27001 or NIST or PCI DSS, everything can be implemented in two ways, one in spirit and one in tick mark compliance mode, isn't it? So when it comes to talking about IoT usage in industrial applications, do you think that tick mark compliance part has been removed from the basic approach of implementing it, or it still continues? Because if it still continues, it is like having a firewall, tick mark, I have a firewall with a rule any to any allowed.
When we talk about whether the IoT implementations are in spirit or are a tick mark policy,
Yeah, like there are standards, as I said, standards can be implemented in two ways. One is in compliance mode. I have it, tick. And the other is in spirit.
yes,
I really want to protect it. Now, when we talk from IoT point of view, fortunately, in the olden days, for rolling out applications, you had months and sometimes years. Today, you have days and hours. So, what's happening? Whether the standards are being implemented in tick mark mode or in spirit
I
mode?
would say they are being implemented in spirit, at least at the organizations that are cyber aware. So, be the leading startups or be the enterprises where, because the incidents are on a rise now. So, people are more keen towards not being just a due diligence company or who has undergone to do due diligence only for maybe to raise funds or to maybe meet certain audits or compliances, but they are more focused on real world exploitable metrics, or they are more concerned about contextual relevance and as to how we can bring in context and how are they actually shielded in their context, in their business context, are they actually obeying those principles? That is what is their outlook when the implementation, and that is where the compliances now are driven by spirit and not just by a tick mark orient. If anybody wants to add, they can.
I can add. I think when it comes to compliance, basically two things, right? One is test of design, and then the second piece is test of effectiveness. We are at a juncture wherein the design part is there. That's where you are talking about, okay, firewall is there, but any-to-any mapping is there. But test of effectiveness somehow is not happening. And that is the reason. And what I feel is the cost factor also has it, because these devices were developed in a batch considering the cost in mind. And if I have to make sure that I have memory for upgrade of my firmware 5 years down the line, I have to keep extra memory along with every device, which is not cost effective for me, right? So, and they know that effectiveness is not much controlled currently by the compliances. So I can just do away with test of design. So that's what I feel. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, so I want to thank, being from an IT background myself, this is a very interesting topic for me. And yeah, like the ecosystem, the product ecosystem varies for each device. So we cannot restrict it to only one type of devices. So thank you for like asking a variety of questions on a variety of products, because people who are not from this background, they will not understand that each product has a different ecosystem and they all require different types of measures to be taken for them. I found it very insightful and people have engaged a lot. Thank you so much for your time.